Hi, my name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they call us Woo.
Well, welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about something a little bit different. We're just going to be chatting about weird, creepy, woo-woo, different folklore type
Which is
things.
not that different than what we
No,
normally talk about, but that's okay.
no, but this is a little bit more like folklore and
Mm-hmm.
like alternative belief type thing. And for
Yes.
whatever reason, the children with the black eyes has been coming into my mind for the last few days. And I was like, I want to talk to Tammy about this. So I was asking Tammy if she wanted to talk about this. And she looked at me like she has no idea what I'm talking about. So I had to explain to
Because
her
I
what
did
the
not.
black eyed children were.
Yes.
And so we're going to talk about that first. For those of you who don't know what this is, it is a folklore, but I think it's real. Um, that there are children that are evil. We will say evil. Some people say that they are the children of the devil, and they are usually between the ages of 6 and 11, and they will appear somewhere and reach out to people and ask for help, ask to come into your house, ask to use your phone, ask to use your bathroom, and
Super creepy.
super creepy.
The
Like they're
moral is
usually
don't trust
pale.
children.
Yes, yes, especially when they're standing over
Do
your bed
not
at
help
night.
them when they need help.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, if they're
so
standing over your bed, that's a whole different scenario.
being all creepy. But they're usually really pale, like I said, between the ages of 6 and 11. And you get like this super creepy vibe, this feeling of dread when they're around you. And then typically, what people say is that once you let them in or you decide to help them, when you look at them, their eyes are all of a sudden pitch black or like this weird, translucent, silvery, like just not normal. Like it's just one solid color. There's no like
Creepy.
actual eye, pupil, none of that. It's just
It's just
one
like
color.
vampires. Don't trust them. Don't let them in.
Yes. Yes. And so, like, I don't know why it has been on my mind lately. Maybe it's because sometimes I think children are creepy and children like to come up to me in random places and ask me for help on
Oh
things.
my
So I'm
god,
always
you're
like,
like the nicest person ever. I would never picture you being like, sometimes children are creepy. You're like
no.
so nice.
So I love children. I love children, but they have something in them that they know how to speak in a tone that just sounds really creepy. It's like, hi, how are you today? Like, just sometimes they can be creepy. That's why they use them in
This
horror
is
movies.
absolutely fair. Yes, I think every parent has experienced their child doing something intentional or unintentionally creepy as hell before.
Yes.
Like just standing over your bed staring at you, or like saying really strange things about, like, I could kill that or whatever. Like everyone has had a
Yes.
moment where you're just like, what is wrong with you?
Oh my gosh. I used to babysit my little cousins when I was younger, and it was in this old, old farmhouse. And they would stand at the top of the steps after they had been asleep, like totally asleep for hours. All of a sudden, they'd stand at the top of the steps and they'd say, Jenny, really quiet. And you'd sit there going, where did that come from? Who is that? And then
No.
then there'd be nothing. You'd hear nothing, and all of a sudden it'd be like, hello? And they'd just say weird things. And then they'd go to bed. So you'd go up there to check on them and they would be look like they were asleep. It was creepy.
Did they do that on
So
purpose?
no, they usually wanted like a glass of water or something. And then like probably because I hesitated long enough, they're like, oh, she's not listening. I'm gonna go back to sleep. I don't know. But
Maybe they were
but so
sleepwalkers.
maybe, maybe. But so I'm not talking about legit children who just do creepy things sometimes. I'm talking about like creepy beings who are acting as if they are children.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, somebody told me a long time ago that one of the sections in my book, I'm actually writing about these black eyed children. And I was like, what? and I didn't know what they were at that time. And
Mm.
so today I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go back in my book and I'm going to look at this again because somebody told me that I had an experience and I didn't realize. So I went back and looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, that totally probably was what it was. So I used to go grocery shopping with my mom. Like every week we would go grocery shopping together when I was a teenager or when I was
Mm.
like young adult. And there was one day we were in the grocery store and we walked into like the aisle that had all the canned goods and all the processed foods, whatever. And we're walking down this aisle and there's these two children standing in the middle of the aisle. And they were wearing clothes that were like, just didn't seem like they were the right time frame for the year that we were in. And their clothes were kind of dirty. And they were, they looked very, very similarly to each other. And both my mom and I, who both adore children and love children, um, both of us started to get a little bit like uneasy about these two kids. And so we're like walking into the aisle, like looking at each other, like, what is going on? This just seems really creepy. And all of a sudden, the kids looked at us and they had like these weird silvery eyes that just didn't feel right. They felt very hollow. And almost in unison, only like a split second off from each other, they're like, will you help us? And it was just creepy. It was so creepy.
It sounds weirder in because I've read I've read your book and we've talked about stuff before. It sounds weirder when you say it now. Like it sounded weird in the book, but like even weirder when you describe it now.
Yeah, so it was like this weird higher pitched tone in their voice and it was like so close together that it was just like a slight echo from each other and it was just something was really off and
That's
really
very
unsettling.
unnerving.
Yes. And like both of us just looked at each other and we like bolted. We did not acknowledge.
Screw
We
you,
just kept
kids.
walking. We're like, nope, nope, nope. And we just kept walking. And I know both me and my mom were probably like, we just walked away from children who asked for help. Like, I know I was having a lot of a hard time about
Mm-hmm.
us walking away from these kids because I'm like, there are a lot of things that could be going on. Like, they could be being kidnapped. Like, they could just need help getting something off the shelf. Like, there are so many things. So it took us about 5 seconds to get from where they were to right around the corner into the next aisle.
Mm-hmm.
This whole time, I was looking over my shoulder at these children because I was terrified. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was so creepy. It was so creepy that I was watching them until we got around the corner. And then as soon as we got around the corner, both mom and I were like, why did we just walk away from children? And we turned right back around to go back to where these kids were. They were gone, like completely gone. And we could not find them anywhere else in the store. And it was so creepy.
Mm.
So so there's that. And so I'm kind of curious. One, I want to know from our listeners if they've ever had any experiences like that, whether they want to tell us creepy children's stories about their own children, or if they want to tell us creepy stories about random children who have approached them, or black-eyed children if they have met any of them. Um, I would love to hear those stories. But so the folklore is that, or the legend is that if you allow them into your home, or if you assist them in any way,
Mm-hmm.
you're allowing the devil in to your life. Like
Mm-hmm.
they lure you in, they ask for your help, and then typically they'll say, oh, my parents are coming soon, or something like that. And then once you start helping them, all of a sudden you'll just feel awful, like something is really not right. And when other people show up, like the parents or whatever, you'll start noticing weird things happening in your life. Like this is what they say is if you've assisted them, all of a sudden you're going to start noticing illness in your family. You're going to start noticing things are happening in your house. Like all these creepy things start happening. And so there's part of me that's like, oh, dodged a bullet on that one. Like ignored the children in the store and dodged a bullet. But like, so it's one of those things that I'm very curious, like your opinion on this, because I normally would not walk away from children who are asking for help.
Hmm.
But
That's what
I
I'm
want to
saying is
know,
like you're the
what would you
most
do?
helpful, like nicest person. So there had to have been something really weird to
Hmm.
elicit that response because you would never just like walk away from people that needed help.
No, no. And it was one of those things where it was creepy enough that it elicited the fear in me that I had when I had creepy experiences with spirits when I was younger.
Hmm.
So it was like, are these people? Are these spirits? Are these other beings? Like I had that in my head as we were going around the corner, like, are
Hmm.
they dead or alive? Like, so so for me, it probably elicited a different response than it would for most people. But if you saw that, what would you do?
Oh my God. See, when you first started telling this story, I'm like, I would totally be the person that just overrode that and helped anyway because that's that's just what I would do, and then I'd be screwed. I was thinking about that because I'm like, I'm sure I'd be a sucker. Like, I'm sure I'd just be like, well, it can't possibly be that bad. It's a child. And don't get me
Help me,
wrong,
Tammy.
I am not telling anybody. I'm not telling anybody to ignore children,
No.
but maybe like, excuse me, if you know that kind of stuff is out there, like trust your gut. I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I honestly don't know
No.
what I would do.
It's like the weirdest
But the
thing
thing is
because
like you guys were gonna go back,
Mhm. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
I'm kind of glad that they weren't there because if I
Mm-hmm.
would have helped them, what would have happened? But but then it also leaves in my brain, well, what happened to them? Where did they go? Because we searched. We looked up and down the aisles to see if we could find these kids, and there's no way that they could have hightailed it out of the store in the amount of
Right,
time
not
it
in
took
that.
us. Because
Yeah.
it was, I didn't see them for literally 1 second. It was like the whole time we were in that aisle, I was looking over my shoulder to make sure they weren't like chasing after us with a knife. I don't know. I had all kinds of
Was
things in my
this
head.
around Halloween?
No.
I'm just kidding. I do have
But
theories about that though too.
about Halloween, like
About
things coming
okay,
out.
I love Halloween. I think
Yes.
Halloween is the best. But I do have a lot of theories around like going through haunted houses and stuff and like
Mhm.
how easy it would be to like actually murder someone in a haunted house because there's
Yes.
actual stories of people like being dead in haunted houses and people just thought they were like really good
Really?
decorations and they didn't find them right away. There was one story of a guy who had been there for like a week and people started
Oh,
complaining about he had like a heart attack or something. People started
oh,
complaining about the smell because the workers didn't even know that he was a real person until they like went back after a week of decomposition. We're like, okay, this is not okay. This is real.
how did people not be like, oh, like I was there with my husband, he had a heart attack and died?
He must have
Like,
gone through himself. I don't know.
ah.
That's the only way it could have happened, you know? Like if he just went through on his own and everybody was like, I don't know.
So I think about this every year. Now that you bring this up, I think about this every time we go through a haunted house. I'm like, how many murderers and serial killers
Right?
are like, this would be the perfect opportunity.
Exactly. And I hope we're not, I hope we don't have murderers and serial killers in our listener base, but I hope we're not giving anyone ideas, but I'm assuming if you think that way, it probably would have been something you
Well,
already
yeah,
considered because it's
yeah,
literally like the best time. It's acceptable to wear masks. It's
yeah.
acceptable to be like way over the top. I don't know.
Creepy.
I don't know.
So there was last year, some friends and I went to, was it last year or the year before? It was during all the COVID stuff. And we couldn't go through haunted houses, so they did
Mm-hmm.
like these drive-through haunted houses.
Mm-hmm.
And so you pull into like a car wash bay and it's like you're listening to the radio and they're telling this story on the radio. And one of the things was um this murderer got loose and was in this area, the area that we were in,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody needs to be cautious and not let anybody get in their car and blah 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 blah. And so they're telling this whole story and you're listening to it, and then all of a sudden you hear screaming and all kinds of like horrible noises outside of your car.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you can hear them banging on other cars and you can hear all these things. And the whole story is that you're now in this place and this murderer is loose in the place that your car is. And they totally play it up. And while you're listening intently to the radio, all of a sudden they come and they try to like open your car doors. They make you lock your doors so that they can't get in. But they like come and try to unlock your car and they like bang on your car and like do all these things. And while we were in that, I turned to my friends and I was like, what if there really was a murderer in here with us? Like, we
Right?
wouldn't know.
No.
Like,
That's what
you
I'm
would have
saying.
no
It's
idea.
like the perfect opportunity. Like, think of
Yeah.
the, like, if someone had actually been killed in that haunted house and left there for
Yeah.
a week, that
Yeah.
murderer would have been far gone by that point.
Well, yeah.
Or like they always have the people chasing you with
a chainsaw.
yes, thank you, chainsaws that don't have the chain on them, but like how easy that would be to just have it, and people would probably be like, oh my god, that's the most realistic thing I've ever seen, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But
well,
it's kind of
creepy.
I have like a weird thing about clowns. I can be around them, but also like I try to explain this to people sometimes. Like, I don't have a problem with people being clowns or like sharing joy or anything like that. It's something about like the makeup and like the garish like painted on smile and the thought of like, well, it probably doesn't help there was actually like murderers that were clowns too, but
Yeah.
I'm not the only one who thinks clowns are creepy. There's something
No.
about like the painted on like happy face
Yeah.
or whatever that creeps me out. And I've certainly been to a few where I was like, that would be the perfect freaking disguise. I wouldn't be able to say who you were. If I saw you murder someone, I wouldn't be able to tell anyone who you were.
Yeah. You're like, it was a creepy clown. I don't know.
Exactly. Do you remember it was a while ago now where like those clowns started just like popping up everywhere?
Yes.
With, like holding balloons and just being weird, which I think was like a Reddit thing or something like that. There was just like a crap ton of people that got in on the joke. I never saw one myself, but I saw some of the videos and I'm like, oh my gosh, freaking creepy.
Yeah. I used to think about that because I would go and do massages at an office building in the downtown area where I lived. And there was a parking garage that I had to get in, and there was an elevator in the parking garage. And I thought about it because there were a lot of clown sightings in that area at the same time. And there had actually been a couple of attacks, like people who were dressed up as clowns, like with a knife and like chasing people and all of those things.
Oh, Lord.
And so there was one day somebody had told me that they got into one of the elevators in the area and there was a creepy clown in the elevator.
Oh.
And like they went to get in the elevator and the clown was just standing there like looking at them, being creepy. And so we got into a whole conversation about, would you get in the elevator?
Heck no.
Like, what would you do? Well,
take the stairs.
I know, but there were so many of them that were
for me. Ugh.
Well, I know. Okay, but think about, okay, you're carrying all your massage equipment and
I would call my husband and be like, you need to pick me up on this level. I am not getting in that freaking elevator.
But the thing is, like, even if you don't get in the elevator, they could get out of the elevator.
True.
So it's like the second that they know you're there, like, is it worse to get in the elevator or like
well, you are carrying a heavy massage table. If they came for you, just throw your massage table at them to knock them over and you keep running.
And it's an awesome shield. I mean,
that is true.
Like,
yes.
It would be so
okay,
perfect.
The one thing I can say, though, is being a massage therapist, I know the spots that hurt pretty much everybody.
Yes.
So I could probably take someone down if I had to.
Yeah. Jab and run. Jab and run.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, for all of our listeners, if a creepy clown or a children with black or silvery eyes comes at you, jab and run. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, don't do it. don't accept help, don't get in the elevator. Like, just don't do it.
Yeah. Like, but I used to think about that every time I would get into that parking ramp, even long after all the clowns had disappeared.
Hmm.
I would still think about it. If I went to get in the elevator and there was a clown in the elevator, would I get in and pretend like I wasn't scared and just keep talking to them? Or would I try to run and hope that they don't chase me because I don't know what I would do if they chased me?
Well, the fair thing is, if they were looking at someone like that, they probably were intentionally trying to creep them out. So
Yeah.
I don't think you would offend them if you were like, no, I'm not doing
Well,
this.
but okay, so if they were really somebody who was there like to scare you and then they really were like a violent, creepy person, like I think they would try to scare you first and then they would chase you if you didn't get in. So
Possibly.
that was my thought process. Like no matter what, I'm either gonna have to jab and run, throw my stuff at them, or like sometimes I was like, do I need to practice my screaming voice? Like,
Massage oil in the eyes.
yes. Just keep my massage holster on so that I can pump it really fast. Sorry, everybody, you get massage humor today, along with creepiness.
Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah,
So
I have no interest in being in close quarters with a creepy clown. I've
okay,
like
which would you rather, creepy clown or black-eyed children?
probably the black-eyed children because at least I know if I don't accept their help, I could just get the heck out of there as soon as I can and just ignore them.
Yeah, but they're gonna sit there and stare at you the whole time.
I'd
Follow
rather
you around
have
in the
them
creepy
staring at
voice.
me than a clown that could possibly attack me because even if I say no thank you, that could attack me anyway. At least I
That's
know there's
true.
an out with the black-eyed children. Not to
Oh,
say they
yeah.
wouldn't be super creepy and give me nightmares, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I just shouldn't go in elevators anymore. I'm not sure. I mean, it is pretty close quarters.
Yeah. Which is, to be fair, is creepy with normal people on a regular basis because nobody talks to each other anyway. Everybody just stands in their own little spot and doesn't look at anybody because
I'm trying
people
to
are weird
remember
in
if it was a
elevators.
commercial or what I watched that cracked me up. It was a person that got into the elevator the wrong way, like a packed elevator, and just stood like staring at everyone. And someone was like, "Nope, you're doing it wrong." Made me laugh.
I've done that with my massage equipment because once you
Well,
have your
that's
massage table,
different
you
if
can't
there's
turn
like no
around.
way that you can turn around.
It's
Awkward,
really weird.
but not intentional. Like I could turn my body.
I mean, I suppose I could have turned around and backed in, like beeping
Although to be
as I walked
fair,
in. Yeah.
growing up in the cities, it was like there were certain things that you're just kind of aware of, and I honestly have never like if it was just an empty elevator and if there was anything like even vaguely creepy like in a car ramp
Hmm.
or something like that, I just would opt for the stairs anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
because I guess I was just, it wasn't like I was afraid for my life or anything like that. It wasn't like I felt unsafe. It was just that you learned different things about, like, especially being a
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah. Awareness is a
Yeah,
good thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which I try to teach my daughter because I love her, but oh my goodness, is she oblivious sometimes? Like, she's managed to be okay so far, but sometimes I have to be like, you are not as big as you think you are. You're not as scary as you think you are. Even when you're feeling like extra confident, like just be aware.
Sometimes the people who don't look big and scary are the scrappiest ones of us all.
That's true. Like I know she would definitely try to get herself out of any situation, but even just like going to the store now and you see all these people like crossing the road looking down at their phones and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Not only is that dumb, but also like be aware. Like you're the person that's going to get targeted. Like why would you do that? Why would you make yourself a target?
Or run into a sign.
Right, at the very
I've seen
least, or
that.
trip on a curb or something like that.
Yes.
But
Yes.
realistically, are you going to go for the person that's like looking around and is clearly like aware of their surroundings or the person that has no idea where they are?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I feel like
I'm
that's
gonna
just general safety.
So back in the day of pagers and beepers,
Mm-hmm.
I had a pager that I used for business. I have no idea why I would have my clients page me, but I did. Like they would page me when they wanted me to call them to set up a massage appointment or whatever. Which now that I think about that, that just sounds weird, but it was normal for that time.
Yeah, that was like
And
our version of cell phones before cell phones were a
yes,
thing.
but I had a cell phone too, so I don't know why. It was just a weird thing. But so I had my pager on me and I went in for a doctor's appointment one day. And like I went up to the front door a different way than I normally do, so there were a couple of stairs going up,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the other way just had like a walkway. And so I'm like walking up the stairs and my pager goes off. So I like continued walking and I'm looking at my pager and there's a giant bay window in the doctor's office right next to where these little stairs were. And so I'm looking at my pager, completely unaware that there's stairs there because I've never gone that direction before. And I look down and my foot hits the next step up. And I literally Superman flew
Oh
in
no.
front of the bay window. My purse goes flying and all
Oh
my stuff is going everywhere. My flip flops go flying off my feet. My pager flies out of my hand. And I'm like, that just happened. So I stood up and I was like, ta-da, in front of the window. And I like collected all my stuff and went in. Of course, there's people like, there was a couple people inside. There wasn't a ton of people to be my audience, but
no. Oh no.
oh my gosh. So I am very aware now when I look down at my phone or I look down at anything because I think of that lovely Superman flight through the
Mm-hmm.
air as I'm looking at the people in the window waving and as I'm going through the air. So yeah, be aware, people, because
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you're gonna have to fly through the air like I did and learn that lesson.
Yes.
Yes, and it would be even worse if you were being chased by a clown when that happened.
100%.
Like,
Or black-eyed children.
yes.
Anything. Anything that creeps you out. Yeah, no thanks. Which is kind of funny. I sent my daughter a meme the other day because it cracked me up, and it was something like, sorry I screamed. That wasn't very I love haunted houses and Halloween and horror movies of me, or something like that. And it cracked me up because that's totally her. Like, she loves all that stuff, but I watch her react to it sometimes and like, why do you do that to yourself? And she's like, I don't know. I just love it. Like, okay.
Same reason all of us do it.
Pretty much. I don't know. It's exciting. Um, yeah, so I was going to talk briefly because we were both thinking of different things that we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been watching the show Reservation Dogs, which,
Mm-hmm.
you know, no affiliation, but oh my God, do I recommend that show. It's so good. So good.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were talking about the Deer Lady, which I thought was super interesting. As we were talking about this earlier, like, there was a million different things that went through my head because I love like really weird shows. Like, I don't know if you ever saw Fringe.
No.
That was like this crazy, like, I don't know, I'm dating myself. That was basically like this lab that was run by this guy that they got out of the asylum, and he started like investigating stuff again. It was all this like paranormal, like weird stuff that they would investigate. So they made this like fringe department of the FBI, I think.
Okay.
Where they called them in for all the really weird stuff. And then like, I loved Twilight Zone, especially like the black and white episodes when I was younger. I just love all the weird stuff. So there's tons of stuff that I'm like, ooh, yeah, we can talk about a bunch of stuff. But anyway, so Dear Lady was interesting to me because I don't really know the full lore around it, but Dear Lady or Dear Woman. So like, the show Reservation Dogs is about a group of 4 teens in Oklahoma that are growing up on a reservation. And it's just like there's a bunch of different characters and things that happen to them or whatever. It's about the community. And sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's like really thoughtful. It's a good show. Anyway, So when they're talking about, she shows up a couple times in that show. And when they first talk about her, it's like everybody knew like what she was, and they were like scared of her. But she was a woman, and then just if you saw her feet, like they had her wearing bell bottoms and stuff, so you couldn't really see it easily. But when you saw her feet, she had deer feet. And so at one point she interacts with one of the younger guys that's the main character, and he's like thinking that she's gonna kill him or whatever. He's like, what did I do? What did I do wrong or whatever? But she was actually like super nice to him, and she helped him out. She helped him get back to where he needed to go. He inadvertently was in the car when she did exact revenge on somebody else. But it was just this like really interesting thing. So I don't know if their backstory to her was actually part of the legend, or if it was like something they made up for the show, but they did this little like backstory on her where basically she was one of the children who, back when Native American children were taken away from their families and sent to these like reformatory schools or whatever, these religious schools, she was one of them. And it was really interesting the way that they played it all out, and even had like the characters that were like playing nuns and all them like talk in a way that you couldn't understand them, so you could kind of experience like what it might have been like to be afraid and all that. But anyway, so basically she was one of those children. She ends up escaping one night and comes across this deer, this like spirit deer, who's like, I can help you, but you need to let me know now if you want to do this. So she becomes Deer Lady, is insinuated after that. And then she later on like exacts revenge on the people who harm the children. I don't know if that's really part of the legend or not, but when I looked it up, it said Deer Woman, sometimes known as Deer Lady, is a spirit in Native American mythology whose associations and qualities vary depending on situation and relationships. So to women, children, and men who are respectful of women and children, she's associated with fertility and love. So it kind of did show that she was like really helpful towards him in the show. And then to those that have harmed women and children, she's vengeful and murderous and known to lure these men to their deaths. And she appears either as a beautiful young woman with deer feet or a deer. So now, and I guess it goes like there's a lot of different native cultures that have this belief. So now it's like, now I'm curious, like, was the deer that showed up in there, like, was this part of the story? Was the deer supposed to be another deer woman that then like endowed her with that? I don't know. It was kind of interesting because it was the first time I had come across that. And then I'm like, okay, why a deer? I'm just like really curious about that because I don't look at deer and go, they look murderous. You know, like.
Well, have you ever seen a deer that gets angry at you? Like during rutting season? Or it is very scary. Like if a deer is mad at you, like you do not want to be anywhere near them. One, they like get up on their back legs and they like, it's like weird sissy fighting, only with hooves. And
I think I've seen videos of that.
Yes, it's actually really scary. And when they are fighting with each other, they have no problem like really attacking each other.
Is it usually the males though?
Yes, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I would assume that females would also get pretty aggressive if you're like coming near their baby or.
I mean, being in the Midwest, like usually our interactions with deer are trying to avoid hitting them with the car.
Yes.
Because sometimes they run right at your car. And, yeah, I guess I don't know. I suppose they could be a little scary. I'm just like really freaking curious about it. Because sometimes it can be like a good thing, according to what I read. Like sighting could be like a sign of a personal transformation, or it could be a warning. And then they say that sometimes the deer woman can join in the communal dancing like unnoticed and just be part of the celebration and stuff. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Like they talk about Lakota and Ojibwe and a handful of other cultures that talk about and have just like a slightly different twist on it, but all is very, very similar. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
So I'm gonna ask a question because this is where my brain went. You said that if anybody wasn't nice to women or children or harmed them, I wonder like if I'm on the bad list because I didn't help the black-eyed children in the store.
But those might not be real children, so I don't know if that counts.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Oh, there's like whole like stories about all of this. I suppose I should look into it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah. I
It's
I
kind of
would love to hear
fascinating.
stories about that as well because I mean, a lot of the things that happened, I mean, those things really happened and
True.
children really were taken away from their families and really were brought to reform schools and like taken out of their
Mm.
culture. I've been I took some classes in a community in the cities when I lived back in the Midwest and they talked very much about how a lot of the children and a lot of the women lost their culture because they were taken out of those communities. And so for that for that to be one of the folklore, I mean, one of the urban legends, I could totally see that happening from a spiritual standpoint. You're gonna protect the people who
Mm-hmm.
were removed from their culture and their tradition. And
Right.
yeah,
Well, and I certainly can't speak for every tribe and culture out there at all, but it seems to be the information I've received or the interaction I've had is the ones I've encountered are generally trying to be a lot more respectful of women and women's role
mhm,
in the community. Like it's not the same as some of the cultures we interact with now where they view women as lesser than or
yep,
in like a servant role or whatever. A lot more like women have the most important role as in part of creating new life, but also like can be doing all of the same things that
yep,
men can. So that's another way, a reason that I think that the reservation dogs is really good because I mean, it doesn't shy away from like some of the harder stuff too, but it certainly like shows these like older men in the community and stuff too, just being like pretty cool guys overall and like
mhm,
respectful and, you know, stuff like that. Like when they talk about seeing this deer lady, they're like, oh my God, what did you do? You know,
yeah,
like, why is she after
yikes,
you?
yeah.
Don't do that.
What did you do? Yikes.
Yes.
Oh
It is
gosh.
fascinating to me though to think like all of these different cultures that have these different like myths about monsters or whatever, they can be anything. Like
Yeah,
children and deer, like who would look at
yeah.
that and be like, "Oh yeah, those are totally evil." Like not at all. And
Well,
then
but I
with the
think
deer
that's why they're
ladies, like is it
used.
really evil? I don't know. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
believe in capital punishment, but on the flip side, like it's kind of like a, well, if you called this upon yourself, can you really be upset that someone's coming after
yeah,
you? Like, don't be a
yeah.
jerk. I don't know.
But I think that, okay, so if we go to the evil side of spirituality, of course, if you're truly evil, you're going to pick the most, um, something that people wouldn't be as afraid of
True.
to try to lure people in. I think that's why a lot of horror movies and a lot of old urban legends or a lot of myths bring children into it because people want to help children and people want to love on children and children are like the sign of innocence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to lure people in, you're going to be like, "Oh, send that beautiful little child over there and lure the person in." Like I've heard stories, and this is a real life thing. I've heard stories about in other countries, people who are trying to pickpocket people,
Mm-hmm.
they will throw a baby at you.
Isn't that
Like
messed up?
because most people will not drop a baby. And I don't know if I've
I
talked
mean,
about this before, but
honestly, like if someone goes to that length to steal my wallet, well, first of all, I'm worried about the baby, but take my freaking wallet. I'm not letting a baby fall on the ground.
right? I know, but at the same time, it's like somebody just threw a baby at you, and are they going to take the baby back? Like, what's going to happen?
Fair. Yeah, I know. I've heard like really ridiculous stories too of people using their children to like even just like steal stuff from stores and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Because yeah, when are you ever gonna be like that child is it's totally all them. They're doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what makes it extra creepy, I suppose too. And that's why I say
yeah,
I would totally be a sucker if I came across black eyed children because I would just assume that I was being creeped out for no good reason. And you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know what I'd do if I saw a woman with hooves. Like,
Well, you're a woman, so you wouldn't
seriously.
have to worry that much.
Well, I know, but I think I would be like, oh my gosh, tell me about that. I think I would be really curious and I'd be like,
So
have
I
you
see
had
you got
hooves
some
your whole
hooves
life?
there.
Like, are those just really cool socks or really cool shoes?
Yes,
Because they do have hoof high heels and stuff
that's
that
true.
they do have those things, but I feel like I would ask the question. But maybe not. Maybe I would be like, wait, that lady has hooves. That's not a person. I don't know. I don't know what I would do.
I don't know. I mean, you'd certainly have questions, as we all should,
Yes, but
but
how many
whether or
people
not
would
you'd
actually
ask
ask
them,
it?
that's true. That's true. But I would imagine, though, if you ever came across Dear Lady, it would be more like, who are you here for? Like,
Yeah.
who's been naughty? Tell me.
Well, now that I know that that's a thing, like I had no idea about Dear Lady before.
Mm,
Now I'm like, now I kind of want to meet Dear Lady
I
because I
know.
have so many questions.
I know,
Like,
right?
and would she answer my questions or would she just be like, Shh, I'm on a mission? Like, and just
Well, if
just
she's
leave.
anything like Reservation Dogs, she would interact and tell you everything you needed to know when the time was right. Yeah.
Okay, so if Dear Woman is listening to our show,
Mm-hmm.
I have questions and
Me
I want to
too.
interview her on the show. So
Mm-hmm.
we're just going to put that out there to the spirit realm. Dear woman, please come talk to us.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Or if somebody knows, actually, if somebody knows like the actual story, like if she was a person that there's a real backstory on, I
Mm-hmm.
would love to hear that too.
Yeah, I'm totally going to look more into it too. This one was just at the top of my mind when we were chatting with what weird things we wanted to talk about today
Mhm.
because I just saw it not that long ago and I don't know that much about it yet. But oh my
Yeah.
God, there's like a million other things that I would love to talk about. Oh goodness.
Yes. Yes. I have so many weird things in my head that I don't think about them until all of a sudden they pop in very strongly before we start talking. And then I'm like, oh, wait, let's talk about this.
Well,
Let's talk about
maybe
creepy
talking
kids.
about black-eyed children today, someone will be like, "Oh my goodness, you saved my life. I didn't interact with the black-eyed children." I don't know.
Oh gosh. Or they're going to be like, oh no, I let those children in my house last week.
Or they're going to be like, "These people are really crazy and I should stop listening to this podcast."
No, no.
I mean, I think so far people are probably just like, "Okay, they're weird, but that's okay." I mean, I don't know. I guess my thought is like there's nothing wrong with being open-minded enough to question whether something is real or not. It doesn't mean that I'm like a sucker that's going to like fall for everything just because someone says like, "Ooh, this is, some spiritual element." It's more just like it's interesting to talk about this stuff and
Yeah.
what experiences people might have had and whether or not they feel like it's real or, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I kind of wish there was a video of that day in the grocery store. Actually, I wonder if there was security footage. There's probably not any children in the security footage at all. It was just me and my mom running through the aisle like,
See, and that's the interesting part is when I read your book, because a lot of the experiences you talked about were your interactions with spirit when you were younger, but this was a case where your mom saw it too.
mm-hmm.
So that
Yep.
does, I guess when I initially read it, I was like, oh, it was just Jen seeing spirit again. But then when you put it that way, I was like, oh yeah, her mom did see it, and
Mm-hmm.
she also was creeped out. So I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't just me being freaked out like normal.
Well, hopefully
Yeah.
you're not as freaked out anymore since you've lived with this for a very long time. But I'm sure there's still moments where you're like, what?
If I saw those children again, I'm pretty sure I would still be freaked out. Not gonna lie.
I don't blame you at all. Well, yeah, I hope that people do interact with this and send us messages. I know someone mentioned recently that, depending on the format that they're listening in, they can't always leave messages underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not always like a comment section, but every description of every podcast and, the formats that we use will give like our social media and our emails. So please feel free to use those links to tell us fun stuff you want to talk about, because I'm sure there's a ton of things that people are curious about that we would love to talk more about.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to this week I am going to try not to have any scary dreams about children dressed as clowns
Oh Lord.
with deer feet. Like just mix them all together. Like
Oh my
I don't
Lord.
know. Yeah. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please tell us
Mm-hmm.
because we would love to hear your stories. I really would love to hear people's stories about these three topics
Yeah, me too.
that we talked about today. And next week we'll have another amazing show for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all we have for today.
It is. All right, we'll have another good conversation next week. See you guys
Yep.
later.
Bye. Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and check the show description for the links to the show. We would love to hear your thoughts below on this episode, as well as anything that you'd like us to talk about on future episodes. Remember, everybody, you are unique just the way you are, and that is why they call us Woo.
Mm-hmm.